Grit is what separates fruitful lives from the aimless. That's a quote by John Ortberg. The standard definition of grit is the firmness of strength or spirit. In this episode of the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, Devon and I will break down our definition of grit and provide you 6 tips to help you cultivate grit in your workplace. So get your barbecue, honey mustard, or Polynesian sauce, because there's going to be plenty of golden nuggets for you to gobble up in this episode. Right about now, you are listening to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, a show where we discuss living as a leader worth following, leading others to do the same, and in doing so, leaving a legacy for future generations. My name is Jimmie Gonzalez Jr., a learning and development professional and leadership coach, sitting down with my co-host Anthony Devon Watts Jr., an expert contact center leader that has effectively led and developed dynamic teams with high motivation. Together, we have over 30 years experience in the corporate game. Join us as we discuss our growth as leaders, share the lessons we've learned, and interview others to see how their leadership style was shaped as they were mentored by adversity.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, presented to you by the Legacy Leadership Learning Group. This is a show where you learn how to live as a leader worth following, how to develop others to do the same, and in doing so, leave a legacy for generations. I am Jimmie Gonzalez Jr., along with my co-host Devon Watts Jr. And if you're new to the podcast, or maybe you're a loyal listener, definitely make sure that you like the episode and give us a review. We greatly appreciate that. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, make sure that you like the video, that you subscribe to the YouTube channel, and also, if you're inclined, go ahead and leave us a comment. But more importantly as well, besides subscribing, is make sure that you share this content with somebody that you know would definitely get a lot of value out of it. They say sharing is caring, so make sure that they understand that you care. Let them know about the Legacy and Leadership Podcast. I'm sure they will not be disappointed. We definitely want to make sure that we get right into this episode. So if you are ready, make sure that you have your shovels together, because we are going to be digging some golden nuggets up for you today. In this particular episode, coming off the heels of our first installment of the Mentored by Adversity series, and talking about Kobe Bryant and the Mamba mentality and really deconstructing his leadership style, we talked about his ability to persevere, his hard work, his pursuit for excellence. So this episode, we're going to be talking about grit and really defining what is grit. And then we're going to give you 6 tips to help you cultivate grit in the workplace with you and your team. So I hope that you're excited, because we're excited again to get into this next episode and break all of this down for you guys. How you doing today, man?
Yeah, I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. Like you said, just excited to be able to break this down for our legacy leaders, our listeners. Especially like when it comes to the topic of grit. It's funny, man. In kind of preparation for this, I was just, really marinating on the word grit, and I kept thinking about Westerns, like Westerns, right? Like, for anybody that has listened to us before, you know that I've talked about the impact that my great grandmother, my granny, has had on me. And, we did an episode called Green Thumb Gardener, where I just kind of share some tips that I learned from her, observing her while she was gardening. Well, I was also blessed enough, maybe because my family got started early, but for my great-great-grandmother to be around when my great-great-grandmother was actually alive, right? And so my granny, my great-grandmother, and her mother, my great-great-grandmother, who we call Other Mama, occupied the same home. And so while my granny would be out in the yard, my other mama, my great-great-grandmother, she'd be mostly in the den watching TV. And there was only 2 things that we really watched with her when I was a kid. And God bless the dead, she lived to be 106 before she passed. But there's only 2 things she that we used to watch as a kid. We used to watch a whole bunch of wrestling, because she loved wrestling. And that's how I first got introduced to wrestling. We used to watch a bunch of like Western movies, right? And so when I think about grit, I just think about like the main characters in those Westerns, those Western movies where they're going out into the unknown and they're trying to make a way, right? And the only bit of law that they have is their Bible and their gun on their side, and they're up against all of these perilous challenges, right? And so I feel like it's kind of fitting when you talk about the importance of grit as a leader, because a lot of times as leaders, right, we're doing that. We're going off into these new frontiers, these uncharted areas, and we're trying to create a way. We're trying to create a path, right? And sometimes the only resources we have are the things that we're able to carry with us, and we don't know what challenges are on the horizon. We don't know what we're going to be faced, but we know that we're going to have to dig deep, and we know we're going to have to overcome whatever those challenges are in the hopes of establishing something greater in this unknown frontier. And so I just think it's fitting, like, for us to start talking about grit and to really break down the tips associated with grits, because if you're an entrepreneur, if you are a business runner, if you're just a new budding leader, inevitably you're going to run into these uncharted situations, and you're going to have to dig deep, and you're going to have to tap into something that maybe you haven't had to tap into before in order to lead through it. And I think that we have some really good tips that we can provide for our leaders based off of the things that we've learned, we've experienced, that can actually make this intangible concept at times of grit very tangible and very actionable, if you follow the things that we're going to be breaking down for our listeners. So I'm excited to get into that.
Yeah, so let's jump into it. What is grit? Like, in its basic terms, grit is perseverance. It's perseverance and it's passion for meaningful long-term goals. It's easy to set short-term goals or to chase kind of, again, easy goals that you can just achieve very, very quickly. But it's those long-term goals, again, that it's a career move. It's this aspiration that you have in your life, and you have to have that perseverance, which helps to build that grit along the way. And it's, as you mentioned, it's that capacity to persevere, because especially when you're talking about long term, right? The longer that horizon is for you to attempt and do the things that you need to do to reach that goal, inevitably things are going to happen. Challenges are going to come up. There's going to be obstacles that you're faced with. So how do you persevere even in the face of those obstacles and still find a way, push forward, and make things happen for yourself? So in essence, again, that really is what we're talking about when we say the word grit. Any other thoughts and ideas come to mind for you?
I think you summed it up perfectly, man. Like you said, it's tapping into that reservoir of energy, of passion, of what your why is, so that you can get through what seems like an insurmountable situation. Because I can think about a couple of instances as a leader, some that are, I would say to be expected, like whether you're, a new business venture, or maybe you have a bad financial performance, and you have to be able to lead the organization through that, and have to figure out, like, how do I keep people on board and motivated and inspired, that I've personally experienced where I've had to tap into grit. And then also the unexpected situations, like I share with you, because I know you and I, we recall this moment, like literally the building falling down around us, right? Like the roof caving in, and you're just like in the debris of what's left, and having to tap into grit to say, like, how do I get this operational in less than 24 hours to make sure that people can eat and people can make money? Like, I don't think there's a single person, a leader that I've talked to, that would have told me that, hey, you may actually run into this one day, as an example, and so be prepared to tap into grit. And so yeah, man, I just think about being able to dig deep and tap into that different level of energy, capacity for resiliency that's needed when you talk about grit.
Definitely think about that scenario. And I just think about, again, even kind of that was a moment in time, right? And a couple of days that we were going through that scenario. But even working for a company that was in the mothership was in the midst of bankruptcy. While that's happening, our specific line of business, we're hoping, right, and preparing to possibly be sold. But with all of the uncertainty, there was layoffs at that time, and the perseverance that was needed to get through that time, to still cast vision, to put confidence into our team that was looking at us and looking at the leaders of, in this particular situation of the call center, and like, how are they going to respond? What are they going to say? And in the midst of all of that, we started this hashtag do more work campaign, and like had people excited about doing more work, because we knew that push and that drive is what was going to get us through that point in time and help us to persevere and come out of that and come out winning. So yeah, definitely a lot of examples that we have of that, again, from, our many, many years of working together, and not together, but just within that space. Good times, man. Definitely good times. We have some good war stories that have definitely chiseled us along the way. All right. So we basically have given you guys for our listeners out there, legacy leaders, again, kind of in basic terms, what grit actually means. But now we're going to get into 6 tips that are going to help you to cultivate grit in the workplace. And we say in the workplace, maybe you are an entrepreneur, you're a small business owner, regardless of the space that you're in. Maybe you have a small team, maybe you have a large team where, you have managers and hundreds of people that you're responsible for. Whatever that scenario that you find yourself in, how do you help yourself and your team, no matter how big or small, again, cultivate that grit? So tip number 1 is to pursue your passions. If it's something that you're passionate about, usually like you haven't necessarily mastered it yet, right? So as you continue to pursue mastering this skill, this knowledge base that you're after, the more you continue to do that, like it inspires you and it drives you to continue to move forward. Again, thinking about, some of our recent experience, there was a time where I realized, because I was being asked as I left corporate America and then came back, and especially after Trinity Fitness closed down, having conversations with you and with our good friend Richard and a couple of other people, it's like, what is Jimmie going to do? Does he want to be in operations, or does he want to do this L&D thing? And I was like, no, like this is what I'm passionate about. Like I really want to continue to go down this path. And I wasn't, there was still a lot that I had to learn, through that time, but the fact that I knew there was opportunities for me to learn and to continue to grow, again, that fueled my passion, and it helped me to push forward to really become a learning and development, or a training and development professional. So pursue your passions, and as you continue to do that, that's going to help drive you through, again, any challenges and any difficult times that you may come across.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think when you're working on something that you're passionate about, you don't see adversity as a roadblock, you see it as a rest stop, right? And when I think about the difference, right, that rest stop means there's an opportunity to reassess, to regather, to replenish, to re-energize, and then continue along the journey, right? When you're working on something that you're not necessarily passionate about, the minute that you run into some resistance, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? You're like, oh, well, I ain't really like this anyway, right? I wasn't meant to do it, and this is my sign, right? Where when you're working towards something that you're passionate about, even those, like, it's easier to celebrate kind of those small wins, those small victories. And when you're able to overcome adverse situations, again, you're energized by it, right? Because you're like, man, I'm one step closer. I have something new in my arsenal, something new in my toolkit. It's, the pursuit of things that we're passionate about that allows us or motivates us to continue to do it, even when we're not being compensated for it, right? Like when we're not getting paid for it, right? Which I think is a critically important component when you're talking about grit and when you're talking about being able to overcome, because at times you don't know if the reward is guaranteed, right? Going back to the example I was sharing about how grit makes me kind of think about people going out into the frontier and the westerns and Western movies and cowboys and all that good stuff. Like, think about all those folks that really ventured out across the United States into uncharted territory with the hope, the passion of, exploring the unknown, right? And there was no guarantee that where they would end up at, would be flush with riches of gold and oil and all that stuff, right? Like, what is going to motivate you to wake up the next day and after you've had a trying hell of a journey so far, right? And you finally put your head down and you wake up the next day, what's going to motivate you to say, all right, let me pack myself up and keep heading forward instead of turning around and heading back? And so that's why, it's, when we talk about these things, whether it's goal setting, whether it's grit, whether it's all of these things that we've been laying the foundation for and kind of talking about with our legacy leader community, we always come back to understanding your why. We always come back to making sure that that's clearly defined, because if you understand your why, you understand your passions, you understand what motivates you, you're ensuring that you're putting yourself in a position to continue to demonstrate at a high level of resiliency, to demonstrate grit. Because again, once you run into those challenges, you won't view them as roadblocks, you'll view them as rest stops. Yeah, man, just pursuing your passion is so critically important. I mean, hell, I learned that, I think I learned that from you very early on when I was just, talking about, new opportunities that were being presented to me, right? And, I've passed this word on to plenty of leaders in my time about, you can't, money can't be the only motivator. Right, because at the end of you get that on day one, like what's going to motivate you after the first paycheck to continue to demonstrate the same level of passion, focus, intensity, right? And it really comes down to doing what you're passionate about. Some of the highest, compensated, fields, right? Like whether it be, medical, like me becoming a doctor or something like that. Like I have no passion in, so I can pursue it. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to be fulfilled, even if I reach, that level of success that I set out on, right? It's really about being fulfilled, and then by pursuing your passions and being fulfilled in your passions, making sure that you can obviously, eat and take care of your family, obviously, right? But again, first and foremost, it's about your passions and being fulfilled.
Yeah, and just. I definitely encourage all of our legacy leaders out there to hopefully find and if you need a coach or talk to a coach, we'd be more than happy to assist you in like really finding out what you're truly passionate about and helping to figure out, or at least clear up a little bit kind of what your purpose is. But in the work environment, especially if you're working for somebody else, sometimes they're giving you work, right? And you're not necessarily going to be passionate about everything. So it's how do you find meaning even in those moments, in those situations? And while there were definitely things that I was passionate about, finding meaning in developing my team and helping them get to the next level, and even viewing, my workplace as a mission field, and sharing my faith with people. And at times where there was other stuff that wasn't as fun to do, but when I focused on those passions, it gave me more meaning in my job and what I was doing to be able to push through some of those difficult times. So pursue your passions. Definitely, again, find meaning in the things that you do. Super important for our legacy leaders to do that. And since we mentioned legacy leaders and you said the legacy leader community, I just want to remind all of our listeners and viewers, if you haven't joined us yet, make sure that you do so on Facebook in the legacy leader community. Again, the community is growing. We have a lot more content that you're not necessarily going to get in the podcast. Every Wednesday, we're going live for cold brews and convos with your L3G coaches, and we're just teaching. We love to teach. We love to have these conversations, but we also love to teach. So that's an opportunity for us to do that. There's a lot more reports and information that you're going to be able to get, just resources that are available to you, again, in our Facebook group, Legacy Leader Community. So go check it out if you haven't done so, and we'll again continue to get into the next 5 tips coming up really, really quickly for you guys. So tip number 1, how do you cultivate grit in your workplace as an entrepreneur, a business professional, whatever that space you find yourself in? Number 1 is to pursue your passions. Number 2, and we did talk about this last week, practice. We're talking about practice and some of the difference between a great player like Allen Iverson and a great player like the late and great Kobe was. Practice makes perfect, right? And they also say perfect practice makes perfect. But people who cultivate grit, like they work hard for success. Again, if you haven't listened to it yet, go back to the last episode, listen to how we broke down the Mamba mentality and really deconstructed that from a leadership perspective. But we talked about that hard work that somebody like Kobe and others put in that allowed them to achieve that greatness, regardless of the skill set and the talent that they were blessed with. That was only going to take them so far. And even as great as that may be, you become one of the greatest in whatever your space is when you take that skill and that hunger and you practice and you work hard and you truly, truly become a master at what it is that you do. So practice makes perfect, y'all. You just have to make sure that you develop your skills, put that time in and put that work in to really get great at whatever it is that you do. If you're an entrepreneur and you're into sales, continue to work on, customer acquisition and resolving objections and asking questions. If you're a YouTuber out there, or you make videos, or you're a learning and development professional, or a learning experience designer, you're working on your craft when it comes to design and PowerPoints and e-learning courses or video editing, whatever it may be for you, but continue to work at that and practice and practice and practice. The more you do that, the better you're going to get, the more confidence you have. That allows you to persevere and build that grit along the way.
Yeah, well said, man. I mean, there's no denying, and I've always kind of had this sentiment, this thought process, but I've been blessed enough to have it validated through just the experiences that I'm gaining now as a father and watching Lennox grow. And by the time this airs, we would have just celebrated Lennox's second birthday. So I know obviously he's not going to consume the podcast now, but because of the legacy that we've been building, years from now he'll be able to hear this, and so I want him to know that Daddy loves you. Happy birthday, happy second birthday, right? But one thing that's apparent, right, is that we're naturally blessed with these God-given abilities, that like these things that we just have a knack for, right? Whether it is you just naturally have an ear for music, and you have individuals who know how to play just by hearing, right? And they demonstrate those skill sets or those attributes at a very, very early age, or people who are just naturally physically gifted, or you have a propensity for math or language, right? Like these natural gifts that you have, but it's only through practice and honing those skill sets, right, that you really unlock their true potential, and you start to hit that level of mastery that allows you to transcend just being good and naturally good, but just being great and being talented, right? And I think when we think about practice and the importance of practice is really about getting more comfortable with your tool, with your skill set, with your talent, your tool, understanding your limits, being able to push your limits, right? Because when the moment or the situation calls for it, right, where it's no longer practice and it's real world and I have to produce, there's not a question about my capacity. There's not a question about the level of output that I can tap into, because I've already tested this, right? I've already tested this. It's part of the reason why the workouts and practice are way more challenging than the physical strain required in the game. Well, why is that, right? It's because it's about testing your limits. I know I can, going back to my football days, I know I can carry the rock, 20, 30 times and play, on defense and play special teams with no issues, because I just went through, 4 days worth of practice, 2-hour practice with an hour lifting before that also ended in conditioning, right? And so physically, I've already tested my capacity. Right, I've tested my capacity for just exhaustion and being able to perform at a certain level. And so that's why practice is so important. We do it so that you can get more comfortable with your God-given ability, your God-given talents, and you can push yourself beyond just great, right, to really elite. And then you also have stress test your capacity so that when it comes time to actually perform, there's no question about your ability to meet the challenge. You already know what you're capable of, and that's why practice is so critically important.
Yeah, and the other thing that I would add to that is, you talked about kind of from a sports or from a football perspective, you also watch a lot of game film. You also watch film from practice if your coaches have the ability to do that, right? So I think about maybe not from a sports perspective. Well, even Olympic lifting, myself and working out with Gary, we're sitting there filming ourselves and going back and looking at the tape. We've taught classes where we've recorded ourselves, right? And we're working on becoming better facilitators and master facilitators, where you have to be able to go back and look and see what were some of the things I did well, and then what are some areas of opportunity that I can continue to work on. So again, it's perfect practice makes perfect. Because you can sit there and you can facilitate 10, 15 classes, but were you able to get better because you weren't really assessing what went well and what were some things that I can improve on, and then how do I work on those things and the next go around and the next go around, and continuing to put in that work to allow yourself to boost your confidence as you allow your strengths to become even stronger, and then do what you can to either minimize some of those areas of opportunity or even boost some of those up as well as you continue to improve your skill set.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. Well said.
So pursue your passions. Practice definitely makes perfect. And then number 3, easier said than done, but it's just keep going. Keep going. And I think you even mentioned this a little while ago. Like, so many times we hit these what we think are roadblocks or these challenges and these obstacles, and we just give up. And then we might give ourselves an excuse, well, this wasn't really meant for me, or that negative self-talk, I'm never really going to be good at this anyway, so we just stop and we just give up. You have to keep pushing. You have to stick with what you're doing, because that breakthrough is right on the other side. I think about that cartoon picture where you see the guy who he's kind of like in a tunnel, and he's digging and he's digging and he's digging, and he gives up. And then you see kind of the other picture right below it, and same dude, but he's going, and like the diamonds are right on the other side. If you had just kept going 1 or 2 more swings, he would have been able to get to the treasure, to that goal that he was trying to obtain. And so many times, again, we just quit. But perseverance makes you more gritty. So the more you're able to not quit, to keep fighting, whether that's a workout where you feel like I'm about to die and I got to keep going, or whether it's a tough situation at work or as an entrepreneur. I mean, we love what we're doing, right? And both of us, we have very full-time jobs, and we do this because we love our legacy leaders. We love adding value to hopefully to your life, and we love talking about leadership. But there's times where we're doing things and you're not always going to necessarily, especially at the beginning, get the reception or maybe the results that you're looking for. But you have to remember your why. You have to stick to why you're doing what you're doing in the first place, and remember those things so that you can keep going and keep pushing and work your way through it.
No, well said, man. When I think about keep going, the first thing that comes to mind is, that's the main reason why I hate running on a treadmill, and I prefer to run on the road, because I like to put myself in a position where I don't have a choice but to keep going, right?
Yes.
I'm so far out, I got to get to where I'm going, so I can't just stop in the middle of the road, right? I know how wildly important that is, so I love to put myself in that situation. But I think going back to what you were talking about, and I know a lot of our listeners who are entrepreneurs can relate to this, which is, honestly, the one of the most valuable attributes you have as an entrepreneur is your ability to continue to press forward with your idea, with your vision, even when there is doubt from other individuals and maybe even a little bit of self-doubt, because you never know when it'll all come together and those things will manifest themselves to what your vision actually is, right? I think about, again, when we got started and recording content and putting stuff out, and some stuff would get 100 downloads and views, other stuff will barely break 30. And the crazy thing about it too is there's not a science to it, right? Because there is a little bit of just a timing factor and what people are looking for, and the stuff that we thought for sure, oh man, this is an A1, this is about to, they're gonna go crazy off of this one. The amount of we broke stuff down, and the video, and that barely broke 50 views. And then, for content that we're just like, all right, hey, let's get together real quick. Like, we still put in the same level of preparation, but we're not expecting that, our cold brew and combo segment, is going to end up breaking 100 and something views in like less than 24 hours. And it's like, oh, I guess y'all really wanted that. All right. And so the only way that you can continue to get closer to these levels that we aspire to achieve, right? Whether it's an entrepreneur or a leader or an athlete or anything like that, these levels that, we hold as gold standards of excellence, is because the only way you get there is through continuing to continue to press forward, continuing to move towards your passion, to move towards your vision, because that's what these other individuals have done. They've spent years. Man, I was listening to Rick Ross talk, and he was doing a segment where basically he was just talking about his grind, right? And for those who do know Rick Ross, that he is a well-known not only music artist but also entrepreneur in a bunch of different spaces. He's obviously expanded beyond music. At one point, he was the president of Def Jam South. So he was running that record label, very large record label, and then he's gotten into alcohol and stores and stuff like that. Like he's really built an empire for himself, right? But he's just talking about his grind, and he was saying, look, I spent 10 years writing music for free before I ever saw a penny off of anything that I created, right? And then one day, everything clicked. The circumstances lent themselves to people understanding his talent, understanding his value, understanding his grind. And from there, he was able to, reach levels of unrivaled success in the span of a couple of years. Now, that didn't happen overnight. These things that we see, right, we see the output, we see the end result, but we don't see the years of just self-doubt and grinding and continuing to press forward and pursue what you're passionate about. What if after year 2 he said, nah, man, this is not it for me. I'm not going to write anymore. I'm done, right? What does that mean for his story? What does that mean for his voice? The millions of people that have heard his music and it resonated with them because it encapsulated their story and it gave them inspiration and it gave them motivation to continue to pursue what they're pursuing, right? And so you don't know if for whatever reason, if you guys are listening to this, if you can't find it within yourself to keep going for yourself, right? Because sometimes we don't give ourselves the same amount of grace as we give other people, right? So if you can't find a reason to keep going for yourself, right, think about the other individuals that you're robbing from being inspired by your story, right? Think about all the individuals that will look to your example for you continuing to go and find that success, like you continuing to press forward, that will look at that example and that will inspire them to get started and to keep going. Think about the people you're potentially robbing from that perspective, right? So if you can't find the motivation within yourself, because I get it sometimes, think about the example you're setting for others. For me, when we put this grind in, when we talk about talking to our legacy leaders, I'm motivated obviously by what we're building and pursuing and being able to connect with people. But I'm honestly, to be real with you guys, I'm more motivated by the example that I'm building from my boys, because I want them to be able to draw inspiration from. I remember, my pops got furloughed. Pops didn't, know how we were going to, make things happen, right? We didn't know when the next bill was going to come due, and how we were going to make sure that we kept a roof over our heads. And he figured it out. And not only did he figure it out and find a new opportunity and, relocate our family down south, which nobody in our family had experienced doing that before, and also end up renting a property, which nobody in our family had experienced doing that before. And they had to figure that out. But then he also launched this legacy leadership learning group venture with his good friend, one of his best friends, his brothers, right, to pour back into other people and set an example, and give people the keys and the tips that he's learned along the way around leadership. Like, he didn't just figure out how can I survive. Like, he said, okay, I'm going to take this opportunity to figure out how can I thrive, right? How can I build something? And I want them to be able to look back at that. And so that's what motivates me to make sure that I show up and we're prepared and we're ready to do the podcast, and we're pouring into this community, and we're thinking about different ways that we can continue to grow this, because even when it's taxing for me, because you and I both, we just have a lot of things going on, right? It's the example that we're setting for them, the example that we're setting for other people in our legacy leader community that look at us and say, damn, they're still putting out content. Like, that last video only got 30 views on it, right? And then they still showed up the next day and they still put out more content. And that was a video that ended up getting 200 something views, right, in 48 hours. That's motivation for me to keep going.
So I love everything that you just said, because you kind of segued really, really nicely into the fourth tip, which is give your work meaning, right? And man, so many, just different memories. But what you just said is so true, even where we're at right now. What I do want to go back and say, in all transparency, to just tie the bow really quick on keep going. You're going to make mistakes. That's natural. Don't be afraid of those mistakes. Hopefully you want to make as many mistakes as possible, actually, because you learn from those mistakes, and then don't make those same mistakes again. But I even in the intro, like, I fumbled as I was going through the intro on this episode, but like, you just got to keep going. Mm-hmm. Like, you're going to mess up sometimes. It's okay. Give yourself, like you said, Matt, sometimes we give other people more grace than we give ourselves. Give yourself some grace, and then give your work meaning. Give your work meaning, and remember exactly why you're doing it. And sometimes you have to tweak the way that you look at things, and you look at your job, or you look at the tasks that you have to do. But when you think about, and I love what you said about, the story of Rick Ross, and even just talking about yourself. And, I remember when I was still kind of contemplating, and, we had already decided to start the chapter of Trinity Fitness. But, those first 2 years, so quickly, at one point I decided that, I was continuing to follow my passion in the health and nutrition space, and felt like I was being called to be a part of this particular ministry, this fitness ministry, and start a chapter here in where I'm at, which is Orlando. And we started in my garage. Thankfully, my wife, she probably thought I was crazy. She knows I'm crazy, but she loves her husband. She's like, hey, go ahead and do the classes in the garage. And I started with like 4 or 5 friends. Definitely a number of times you came out there and visited and did workouts in the garage. And then we kept pushing and we kept pushing. And then the next year we were blessed to be able to get space in our church and be able to use space there, which allowed us to grow a little bit. But as I kept going and moving forward, and really thinking about, okay, I think I need to leave my job and the comfort that I have of getting a paycheck every 2 weeks, and what is it going to take for myself and for my family to do that, and to open up an actual facility and move away from even kind of the comfort of being at the church and have our own place. But like you said, I thought about my kids, and I could not do this at all. I can stop. I can quit. I have a job. I have a career that was going very, very well. What lesson am I going to teach them in a negative way if I don't push forward and if I don't do those things? And they were there to witness all of those things. You were there, to witness all of those things, and all of the successes and some of the misses that we have, and ultimately getting to a point where, while we helped so many people and I had so many great experiences, it got to a point where, from a financial perspective, it wasn't working and we had to close it down. But like, I just would not, I don't regret any of those 4 years, you know what I mean? But it was the meaning in waking up at 4 o'clock and going to a 5 o'clock class, and sometimes there was 1 or 2 people there, and still coaching and giving everything I got, and just as I would if there was 20, or we were blessed when all of a sudden, boom, we had like 50 people in this spot. I'm trying to figure out how we're going to, get all these people doing these workouts. And even us, we talk about cold brews and convos, which happens every Wednesday night in the Facebook group, Legacy Leader Community. If you want to see it, you got to be there, or you can catch us live on a YouTube channel. But sometimes we go live and there's nobody there, or there's 2 people there, but we know why we're doing it, right? And hopefully they'll catch the replay or they'll see the video, but like we still love to teach, and we're going to focus on the meaning of why we're doing what we're doing, and knowing that it might not be right now, like literally in the moment, but somebody's always watching. And what are they going to learn from you? How are they going to be inspired by your grit and your ability to persevere, your courage in the face of adversity, your transparency when you make mistakes, but knowing that you're going to learn from those mistakes and continue to move forward? Like that's how you find the meaning in your job.
I love that word, courage. Good word.
Yeah, it's in the face of fear, it's still pressing forward and doing what you need to do to still chase that dream and chase that goal. So focus on the meaning, especially, when you're thinking about if you're in the workplace, or maybe if you're an entrepreneur in a multi-level marketing and you're thinking about, the millions of dollars you can make, or you're thinking about bonuses or promotions at your job. I believe it was Jada Kiss that said, when you chase the money, that's when the money starts running. Like, don't chase the money. Do what you're doing because of the passion that you have, the meaning that you find in what it is that you're doing. And if that's what God has for you, then the money eventually will come.
It's crazy too, like just how you hear that echoed so often by highly successful people, and it's not just a flippant statement. Like, these people are giving you their testimony. They're giving you things that they've actually done and experienced. Again, we see the end result, but we don't see the years and years of just pursuing what you're passionate about, not seeing a penny, not seeing any monetary reward for it, but that doesn't deter you from still being excellent. I remember, man, I was watching Bernie Mac. He was doing an interview with Oprah. And I've always been a huge Bernie Mac fan, and they were just talking to him about him as a comedian, as an artist, right? And he was drawing the distinction between, like, hey, I'm like, Bernie Mac is entertainer, is a character, right? Like, I know that you guys see me on stage and you think like I'm always like this. I am not always like this. Like, this is not how I'm with my family. This is not how I am when I'm like,
when I'm at church. I know what video you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. This is how I am when I'm on stage, because it's for entertainment, right? He's like, I even had to have a conversation with my daughter, my 8-year-old daughter, say, hey, you're gonna hear some things, but that's not how Daddy is. I'm doing it for entertainment, and she kept defending him as she got older. But they ended up getting into the conversation about the financial success that he was seeing. And he was just like, guys, you don't understand, like, I didn't do it for the money. I didn't set out to be a comedian because I wanted some type of financial success. I set out on this because my love for comedy is so deep. I'm passionate about just being the best comedian, and my pursuit of just being the best comedian, right, has afforded me the opportunity to be in this position where I don't have to worry about the financial stability for my family. And I just believe that is so critically important. Like, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a leader, as you guys are pursuing these things, and we keep talking about pursuing your passion, right? Like, really going after what you love, defining your why, giving your work meaning, right? That's the importance. If you continue to pursue what you're passionate about and continue to find meaning in the work that you're doing, the rest is going to take care of itself. When I set off on this path of leadership, it was not with the expectation that I was going to be, financially, set. That's not why I pursued an opportunity to be in leadership. It's because I was passionate about teaching. I was passionate about developing individuals. right? And I found meaning in the interactions that I would have with people from these different walks of life, with different backgrounds and different experiences that maybe did not think that they could achieve or achieve success in this space and be able to carve out something meaningful for them and their family, and to be able to play a role in that, and to be able to play a role in helping individuals find confidence in themselves, find their voice, find a skill set or develop a skill set they didn't even know existed. Like, that's what feeds me. That's what feeds me. And merely through the pursuit of that, I have been blessed enough and fortunate enough to be in a position where I can take care of my family in a means that that I didn't even think, I didn't even fathom as a 19-year-old pursuing leadership. Like, I didn't, you know what I mean? The only examples I had around me, like, my father was not in the business space. He worked in government, right? He was military, he was law enforcement, and that had been the story for most of the men in my family. They had gone down these paths of public service, and so growing up, I thought that's what I got to do. It's like, that's how you take care of your family. You get involved in like a government job, you get a decent retirement, right? Like, you punch the clock, you do your time, and they're there. And I've just been blessed enough to have a different path and be able to chart a different path that wasn't necessarily laid out for me, right? So I love, the point you're making about, giving your work meaning. And I think about, man, I'm inspired, to your point, when you were doing classes and there was only one or two people, right? And you bet on yourself. Like, grit comes down to betting on yourself. You bet on yourself, right? You say, hey, we'll figure it out, because I know that this is what I'm passionate about and this work has meaning. And when there was two individuals in there, to be able to pour into them, the folks that woke up at 4:00 in the morning to be there for the 5:00 in the morning class, because for them, the meaning behind that interaction, that experience, was, for some of those individuals, based off of what I know and I've observed, it was the difference between them being able to have a certain lifestyle from a health perspective that would allow them to spend more time with their family, right? To be able to enjoy more years with their family. Maybe they got confronted with news from the doctor that said, hey, you have to do something differently about your health and your well-being. Otherwise, you may not get as many years left with your family as you would like. And them taking that first step, and you and your class and your ministry was the life preserver for them, right? And so that's the meaning behind why you pour into those two individuals the same way you would when you had classes of 50. That's the meaning behind why we pour into the 1, 2, or 0 people that show up on our lives, the same as we do when we have several people showing up and participating in webinars and leaving comments and the hundreds of views and all that stuff, right? It's because you never know who's listening and how meaningful this interaction, this word, this moment can be for them, what that means for them. And so we take that very, very seriously. So as you guys, again, our legacy leaders, as you're going through this process, you're trying to tap into that grit, give your work meaning, find that meaning. It may seem trivial. It may seem like, it's just one individual. To that one individual may be way more important for them to hear that word and to get your full attention than if you were speaking to a room full of thousands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love what you said just about the interactions and making the most of those moments that you have. Again, even if it's with those one or two people. So, and best believe we're going to get you guys the content. We're going to chop it up, and we're going to make sure that you get the content one way or another. Thanks. So you may not catch it live, but you're going to catch it at some point. Thanks. That is for sure. So the fifth tip that we have for you guys, again, how do you cultivate grit in your workplace, on your team, as an entrepreneur, as a business professional? Definitely as men of faith, you have to trust in God, right? That's, for me, that is first and foremost. Within that as well, it's also learning how to trust yourself. There's going to be again, situations that we're faced with and setbacks. And there was a lot of times where, my confidence started to wane just a little bit. But when I thought about why I was doing what I was doing and the calling that I have, and even now, there's things that happen to us as we're going through this process, and it's not always gravy, and there's setbacks along the way, but we have this vision, for what it is that we're trying to build. We also have the vision of the legacy leaders. Some of the faces we know, some of them we don't, but we know that they're out there. We know that there's people in Mexico, in Canada, in Australia, in South Africa that are listening and watching this show and watching the Legacy and Leadership podcast. So when you think about those things, it's trusting in myself, even in the face of those setbacks, that I have been blessed again with a certain passion, with a certain calling and certain skill sets, that as long as I continue to focus on that, I will continue to be able to persevere and continue to build that grit and cultivate that grit in my life as a person, as an individual, but then also showing that and providing that example for the people and the team that are around me.
Yeah, I love that, man. When I also think about trusting in yourself, I think about it also from a more practical perspective, right? As we as leaders or entrepreneurs are navigating some of these uncharted territories, and you're having to make decisions, and you may not have an abundance of data that's available to you to make an informed decision, right? Like, whether it's how you're growing your business, do I market here? Do I market there? Right? Do I have this type of discussion? Do I think about implementing this process improvement, this change, right? I just think it's critically important that when we talk about trusting yourself, we're talking about instincts, like trusting your instinct as a leader. And I think it can't be understated just how as leaders, as entrepreneurs, we've gotten to the positions that we're in because we've proven time and time again our instincts to be correct, right? Before I knew the things that I knew about leadership, before I knew, all the different concepts that were out there from a change management, process improvement perspective, and Agile and Kaizen and Six Sigma and, 4D coaching models, before I knew any of that stuff, what I did know, right, is I had an instinct for how to connect with people, how to influence, how to motivate, how to understand what was important to them, how to take something that seemed complex and be able to break it down in a tangible way that was digestible and help somebody understand, like, oh, this is attainable, right? This is not a far-fetched concept. That's all I had. All I had to go off of was instinct. I didn't go to any school. Nobody sat me down and taught me all of these things, right, when I first got started. And then as I've continued to grow my career, I've leveraged my instincts to help influence decisions I made around opportunities I took, things that I took the time to learn and invest in myself and enrich myself with, right? And so, again, my advice, for our listeners, our legacy leaders, as they're listening here, is critical, important to grit is also trusting your instinct too. Like listening to that voice, that subtle whisper, that voice that's saying, hey, have you thought about this? Hey, you should consider doing this, right? Now, obviously, you want to, make sure that, if there's data available, if there's information available, like, don't be naive, don't be ignorant, like leverage that, but also don't be on the flip side and dismiss your instincts that's telling you, hey, even though the data is saying this, right, the data is telling this story, there's also this other component that is not quantifiable that you have to take into consideration. And because of that, you should consider this, right? Like, you really have to be able to trust yourself, trust your instincts, because it's what's gotten you to where you're at. And I think, again, maybe even more so, that's probably even more so important for entrepreneurs as you guys are going out and you literally, because we can relate, building something from the ground up from nothing, right? And it's not necessarily like you have the template laid out in front of you. I know that we don't have a template laid out in front of us for what we've been able to build with the Legacy and Leadership Podcast and the Legacy Leadership Learning Group, right? We are using the data that's available to us, but also using a hell of a lot of instincts as we build this thing out, and using each other, obviously, as a sounding board as we make these decisions. And, I think that has continued to bode well for us as, you kind of charted off some of the areas across the world that we've been able to lend our voice to and connect with leaders across this globe. That I honestly think if we didn't listen to our instincts, we wouldn't have been able to have the type of reach that we've been able to see so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that instinct, it's also important to, again, when you're in those situations and maybe your confidence is starting to dip a little bit, is to ask yourself, like, what do I trust about myself? And again, kind of getting back to those instincts, and then even having people around you that you trust, that I can ask them, that same question. What are some things that I really should be trusting in myself about? And I remember on the heels of being away from corporate America for about 1.5 years, coming back working with you again. I was about 3 to 4 months in it, and was just feeling like, man, like, was I really gone that long? This is leadership. Like, these are things that I always felt that I was really good and great at. And having conversations with you, and you reminding me, of things that I should have trusted in myself, and allowed me to say, okay, I'm taking this feedback, I'm absorbing it, and he's right. You know what I mean? And then taking that and moving forward and pressing forward from that, which segues into number 6, y'all. All right. 6 tips for you to cultivate grit as an entrepreneur, as a business person in your workplace or in your business. You're a business owner yourself. Surround yourself with gritty individuals. If it wasn't having somebody like yourself, having somebody like Richard and so many others that we worked with that like just magnified and conveyed grit, not perfection, expert status in some respects, in some areas, but just grit and tenacity and perseverance. The amount of things as a team that we went through and that we fought through, and the amount of success that we were able to have, as again a group of individuals just influencing each other to work harder, to perfect our skills, to develop our skills, and to master the things that we were doing and the things that we were passionate about. It was just a hell of a team. So when you socialize with other gritty people, like, you're just naturally going to develop more grit in yourself. So surround yourself with gritty people. If you haven't done so yet, again, I will plug and let you know, get into the Legacy Leader community. There's a number of gritty folks in there that are just phenomenal at what they do, how they lead. Some of the folks that we were teamed up with are also in that group. So just thankful, again, for being able to be surrounded and blessed to be surrounded by gritty folks that have helped me develop that. I think about my boy Gary, another one of my best friends as well. And, from the gym perspective, my man is just grit all the way. And it makes me mad sometimes, but it pushes me because he's just so good at what he does. And can fight through the pain and can fight through the challenges and the obstacles. But all of that is just the mental game, right? And the mental things that we go through and that we fight through that, again, allows us to persevere and build grit. So you got to have a team, man. Got to have a team of gritty people around you.
Yeah, man. I think that's spot on, man. And you named a couple of folks that instantly come to mind in that situation. Like when you're talking about like personifying grit, that energy is just tangible, man. Like I think the word, the phrase nowadays is like the vibe, right? Like that vibe is tangible, man. When you're surrounded by other people who are just resilient, scrappy, like just solution oriented. Like, bro, we don't have like, just a squad of MacGyvers. You know what I mean? Like all we got is shoestring and chewing gum, and we are going to figure out how the hell we're going to build, a rocket ship. right?
Yes.
That just feeds something. You know what I mean? It feeds you. It feeds the spirit. It also lets you know that you're not in the fight alone. Because I
Yes.
think, admittedly, human beings by nature are courageous in groups. You know what I mean? Like, when there's a swell of people committed to something, right? Like you're able to find that additional level of courage. It's like, all right, it's not me going it alone, right? Like I got people with me. I got people backing me up. And so you got to be able to play into that, right? And, you guys have probably heard it said 17, billion different ways, right? You show me, you show me your friends, you show me the people you surround yourself with, you tell it, you show me who you are, or, the phrase that, the first 4 people you interact with on a daily basis are the people that you're the most like, right? And it's because we naturally, again, as human beings, we pick up on these tendencies, skill sets, experiences, like these quirks, and we learn from them and we incorporate them into our personalities and our approaches, right? I mean, we've been ingrained to learn that way from the time that we were brought into this earth, right? As a child, like I think about everything that Lennox is learning. He's learning from observation. He's learning from how he sees me and his brother and his mother and the television and just kind of all of those things. He's getting ready to make the leap into daycare and start being around some other kids. And so I know I'm prepared that he's going to be coming home from daycare with, just different, quirks in his bag from things that he's picked up from, being around his teachers and other kids. Right. And so knowing that we're wired like that from birth, that doesn't stop as you continue to grow. And so, in my prior experiences, I've been able to pick up some phenomenal attributes and examples from other individuals. Again, things that I still carry with myself to this day, that have definitely been ingrained in terms of my leadership approach and my personality and my leadership philosophy. And there's things that I'm learning today, for sure, right? I recently was just kind of sharing with you a meeting that I had that was just like, it was really just impactful for me. You know what I mean? Small group, but, to be able to sit down with, the CEO of an organization that's kind of lauded for its success from a financial perspective, but also from a customer perspective and just an innovation perspective, and to get insights and to glean how, these individuals, they think, they process, they think about the customer, they think about the experience, they think about business, they think about entrepreneurship, they think about growth. Like, to learn those things and to be surrounded by that, like I can already see how that is manifesting itself in my interactions and my thinking after, having that exposure. And so, again, it's just critically important. Surround yourself with gritty people. Look for that attribute. Seek it out. And when you seek it and when you see it, don't just observe it from a distance, but be a part of it, acknowledge it, right? Glean from it, pull from it. And when you inevitably run into a situation that challenges you, right, and you find yourself viewing it as a roadblock and not a rest stop, reach out to those gritty individuals for guidance. Right? Because again, they could just be a wellspring of knowledge and resource and encouragement and motivation that will allow you to continue to tap into your own grit, that next level of resiliency, and push through.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, to our legacy leaders, there you have it. In its basic terms, grit really comes down to perseverance and that passion for meaningful long-term goals. And how do you fight and work through the obstacles that inevitably are going to come along the way? We just brought down 6 tips to help you cultivate that type of grit in the workplace, in your own small business, as an entrepreneur, if you're in the business world, in corporate America. Again, making sure that you pursue your passions. Know that perfect practice makes perfect. Keep going. Don't quit. Fight through those situations. Assess yourself, make adjustments, and keep going. Give your work meaning. Make sure that even in some of the most mundane tasks that you might have to do, find meaning that fuels that passion, and then trust yourself. just rely on your instincts. And if you're losing some confidence, remind yourself about what can I really trust in myself. And if you need to ask other people that same question so they can remind you, you can continue to rebuild your self-belief. And then last but not least, again, surround yourself with other gritty individuals. If you do those 6 things, you'll be able to cultivate that grit in yourself and definitely cultivate that grit in the workplace and within your team. Through all those processes and trying to persevere and push forward, you may lose focus, right? Sometimes when you have so many things going on in projects and you can't seem to get them done, you have this long to-do list and you feel like you're never able to accomplish that. If you're having those type of challenges with your focus and you're really looking to develop a laser-like focus that allows you to achieve success and attain the goals that you're trying to obtain, then you really need to check out our Focus for Success online course that we just launched about a week ago. Within this course, you're going to have an over 30-page ebook that's breaking down 4 specific areas and a lot more, but 4 areas that are going to help you to develop that laser-like focus. You're also going to have 2 different video series, one where Devon breaks down distraction diffusion and really focusing on taking a look inside of yourself and your personality. And once you have a good idea of that and what makes you tick, how do you use that to diffuse all of the distraction in your life? And then another 9-part video series where I start to break down productivity secrets, giving you the tools and the information that you need and breaking down and showing you how to use these different tools to figure out what's most important, as opposed to things that are not important and urgent in other people's lives, and then using these tools to make sure that you're able to accomplish what you need to accomplish. Check out the show notes. You'll be able to find the link in the description. Again, we definitely know that it's going to be of value to you, so go ahead and check that out. The Focus for Success e-learning course, again, created by Devon and myself and the Legacy Leadership Learning Group. You're not going to want to miss that. Again, to all of our legacy leaders, man, we really, really appreciate you listening. Please show us some love. Make sure that you leave a comment, like, and again, share this with other people that you know would get value out of this episode and even additional episodes that we've put out in the past. If you want to reach out to us, again, join us in the Facebook community, Legacy Leader Community. You can join us and among other gritty individuals where we're having conversations. We're going live every Wednesday. A lot of resources in there, again, to help you with time management, focus, how to build grit in your life, perseverance, so many different topics that we tackle specifically within that group. You don't want to miss that. And then follow us on IG and Twitter at Legacy Leadership. You can follow myself at Coach_Jimmie G Jr. on Instagram, and also follow Devon at Leadership Docent. And then LinkedIn, Facebook, and of course on YouTube as well, Legacy in Leadership Podcast. We'd love for you to follow us on all those different platforms. Wherever you're at, that's where we're going to be, again, giving you different types of flavor of the content that we have coming out for you to help you live as a leader worth following, then lead others to do the same, and in doing so, leave a legacy for generations to come. Stay tuned for the next episode. In the next episode, we're going to be talking about what is resilience. So we just broke down what is grit. We're going to be talking about what is resilience and the importance of resilience and grit for you as an entrepreneur, for you as a business person, a small business owner in your workplace. We're going to be breaking that down for you in the next episode. So stick around for that. Again, we're dropping these episodes every Wednesday for our legacy leaders out there. As always, we appreciate you guys very much. God bless and stay encouraged.
Rage on that beat, going crazy.
You have just listened to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, hosted by Jimmie Gonzalez and Devon Watts. Thank you, and we hope that you live, lead, and leave a legacy worth remembering. Until next time.